And you're right. They need to find a second or third guy to pair with him. But don't overlook Abel's importance and if Tennessee holds on to Eccles and how pivotal he was to do that.
There we go. Ethan, is Tennessee a top 5 roster with Josiah-Jordan James back? Do you feel comfortable with that preseason top 5 ranking? The best shooter on the team, by the way.
This is such a tough question because I know Ryan and I disagree on this, but if you look at it from, I mean, once again, I look at things from a national perspective more than I do from a Tennessee or a simple roster perspective. If you look at this team from a national perspective and you don't think they're at the very least a top 7, I really looked into it. I think they're top 5, if at the very least top 7. I mean, they have everyone in their starting 5 is their projected starting 5 is returners and Dalton Knecht, which, you know, it's hard to put too much into transfers, but I think he's going to be a daggum good one. I think Knecht is going to be really good. And Tennessee's roster, just in general, it's returning veterans, it's good newcomers, it's good people from the transfer portal. And by good people from the transfer portal, I mean Ledlum and Knecht, because they're probably the two that are actually going to do something in the court this year. But you've just got so many different avenues for Tennessee to be good that I think you can not safely, you can put them in that conversation and not be ridiculed for it. I mean, Jeff Borzello agrees with me. Jeff Borzello has them as a top 5 team right now. And that's going to change because there's going to be people, you know, moving around a little bit. I feel like May 31st was kind of the deadline for a lot of that action. Sorry, my dog is going crazy. But like, for example, when Ryan and I were talking about it, Zach Edey, in that time, Zach Edey has come back at Purdue. So, you know, Purdue, I'm not sure. People are championing Purdue as a top 5 team in the country. I personally don't see it. I just don't. It's just because Zach Edey is coming back. That's why people are going to say Purdue is that good. But, I mean, otherwise you got Kansas, Michigan State, and Duke that you can definitely put above Tennessee right now. Marquette, maybe. Kentucky's potential, not them right now because there's too many.
Yeah, I wouldn't put them ahead of Tennessee right now.
Yeah, not right now, but their potential to be maybe. USC's potential to be maybe, but you can't put them ahead of Tennessee right now. Like, you can't say definitively that they're top 5 preseason teams. Tennessee, however, because they have all these veterans, because they have new guys coming in, because they have solid pieces in the transfer portal, their only real question to me is post. But you got Tobe, you got Jonas, you got, I mean, you know, that's the question mark, isn't it? Is whether or not you have enough guys in the post, probably running Josiah at the 4, that could get you to that top 5 level. Me personally, I think calling them preseason top 5 is not a crazy thing at all. Now, if you look more at the roster and you say, is this a top 5 roster? Kind of like Ryan was arguing with me on about a week ago on this. I would tend to agree with Ryan because you got a lot of questions. You got Zakai, who is not healthy yet, not 100%. I expect him to be healthy, but, you know, your starting point guard not healthy going into the season, that's not great. You got a lot of transfers that you have to rely on. You're going to have to rely on at least one of these freshmen between Estrella, Carr. I'm going to count Dillion as a freshman because this is going to be his first season. You got to count on at least one of them to do something of any merit. And that's a lot of things to ask of a basketball team for a top 5 team. I will definitely yield that. But if you look at their overall what they're returning, I definitely think they're a top 5 preseason team.
What about you, Ryan? Have you, after a week of thinking about Ethan just destroying us in the Twitter DMs, was fired up?
I understand. I'm not 100% like, you know, they are definitely like, I wouldn't hate you for not saying it, but
you're fired up, man. You're on the like you're ready to go.
I think they're going to be daggum good. I think a lot of people are underestimating them. I think they're going to be really good.
Punch the Final Four ticket, says Ethan
anyway,
Stone of Saturday Down
South.
What about you, Ryan? Are you there?
I think I'm not there. I think Ethan did a good job of explaining the difference of how we look at it, where to me, yeah, preseason, like, sure, you just want to look at like the roster, what's proven. You know, there probably is a good case that they're top 5. But preseason rankings in college basketball, hardest of any sport. Nobody, besides Aaron Torres, who went to UConn, had UConn in their preseason top 25 last year. Not a soul had Kansas State close to threatening. It's just so hard with how these rosters change year in, year out to project things. So I look at it less of compared to everybody else and more, all right, what does Tennessee have pieces-wise? And if you're asking me, do I think at some point next season will Tennessee be in the top 5? We'll say even after November, so we take out the preseason element of it. I would probably say yes. I mean, they were last year. But when I look at, has this team done enough to address their issues and be they're going to be in top 5 from start to finish of the year, the vast majority of the season? I don't have that as a definitive yes. I don't think it's necessarily a no. I mean, I think Dalton Connect is a really talented guy and could be a star, but it's hard for me to say you're going from playing Northern Colorado. I couldn't even tell you what conference that's in. A bad Northern Colorado team, I'll add. Not a good Northern Colorado team. He's shooting as much as he wants. It's hard for me to say that that's going to be an easy transition, especially with Rick Barnes' kind of history at Tennessee with transfers. And not many of them have panned out. And even more than that, I think that's where the most talk will be. I think Freddie DeLeon is a big X factor just because his ability to score. But you look at it, and this is what I said last week. Santiago Vescovi, I'm a huge fan of. I think he's a great player. Is still the best scorer on Tennessee's team. And you could say Zeigler is a close second. Besides that, there's not really a close second. And that's Tennessee's issue, is finding consistent scoring game in, game out. And I just don't know. They have definitive answers to that. Dalton Connect could be that. I'm certainly super high on Jemai Meshack. I think he's capable of taking a step forward and probably not being a number 1 guy, but being a better number 2 or 3 than Tennessee had last year. And I think you could say the same thing probably only with Awaka offensively, that he could take a step and be a double-digit scorer. But you don't know. You're projecting guys taking jumps forward, which are certainly possible. And then you're looking at a guy like Connect, or you're looking at a guy like DeLeon, who hasn't proven it at this level. They're definitely really talented scorers. But what happens when you get in the heart of the season? What happens when Rick Barnes is on you about your defense not being good enough? Do you keep that confidence offensively, and are you able to push through and kind of become get into a groove offensively playing with the depth Tennessee's going to have? You know, these guys, it's no guarantee any of them are going to get 20 minutes a game. Can they get into a rhythm and become consistent offensive threats? That's what I don't really know about. I think this team's floor is really, really high, and that's where I'll give Rick Barnes and the staff a ton of credit for what they did this offseason. This is a team that I think will spend the entire year in the top 25. But when you're talking about top 5 team that is one of the best in the country, they could get there. I'm not saying they can't, but to me, there's still a lot of questions to be answered.
I just wonder it's probably going to change throughout the year. And obviously when Zakai's ready, and then injuries are always just a part of it. But I do wonder who will end up being the best 5. I wonder if there's going to be, like, friend of the pod, Will Warren, and I wonder if there's going to be like a disconnect between, like, clearly this is the best 5 for Tennessee and what Barnes is going to want to do for his best 5. I wonder if there's going to be a disconnect this season, because there is a lot of potential for Barnes going super big here and relying on going super big and trusting that more than the versatility he might have with Zakai, DeLeon, Josiah-Jordan James, Dalton Connect, and Jonas Idu or something like that. Like, I wonder what the best 5 and should be the closing 5 will end up being for Tennessee, and if it will result in some hurt feelings. Because I wonder what Ledlum has been told coming into the process, because I don't see a way he should be on the court in important moments late in games. Like, if there's a point where it's like Adu and Ledlum, I'm going to be upset. I'm going to be annoyed, because if you want to start there, that's fine. Like, you want to start games big and just brutalize people on the board, like, that's fine. But I just don't see a scenario where those two should be on the floor to close. Maybe Ledlum's the closing 5, and Adu gets his feelings hurt, and he's not the closing 5. I don't know. I have my doubts, and I'm pretty high on Adu coming in this year. I'm very curious, because I think he actually could be a pretty solid wide open 3 pick and pop shooter. Like, you see it in practice, and like corner him top of the key 3. I think it can happen if he trusts it. Like, he is someone. Adu has the most upside of any of them to me and what he can do, but we'll see if he ends up being that closing 5. I don't know, Ethan. Do you agree with that? And what do you see the best 5 being?
That Adu, the 3, that's interesting. I mean, that's more projecting, like Ryan is talking about. That's more, hoping he can get to that point where, I mean, there was a point where Olivier couldn't shoot either.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get to Olivier, I'm sure, but there was a point where he couldn't shoot beyond the arc either. He developed that, and he became a legitimate threat at that. It's so difficult to project that kind of stuff, because there's a couple guys that are question marks like that. You got Ledlum, who is I agree with you, Chase. I don't know what Ledlum's going to do from here out. Especially, I'm assuming he assumed that James was not coming back,
right?
He's the one that gets the short end of the stick to me. Josiah coming back, like, he's the one that's got to be like, this is a very tough break for a guy that had a lot of good options.
Yeah. And I think Ledlam has the potential to be pretty decent. It's a jump from the Ivy League to the SEC, so that's always going to be something you have to take into account. I think he'll be like an 8.